When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 10. Transformation began the moment she exposed her secret. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I introduce you to our guest, Rena Ruparelia. She is a mindfulness junkie, a hope dealer, and a wellness warrior. She's on a mission to help people awaken to the present moment so they can feel their best and be their best each and every day. She relates to those who experience the common stressed, tired, and overwhelmed by life. She has created a lifestyle where she shows up as a mindful living guide and helps people feel good in all aspects of mind, body, and soul. She is also the voice behind at psoriasis_thoughts, which is a community that empowers people living with visible skin conditions to love and accept themselves as they are. She's been featured in Glamour UK, Women's Health, and Dove Derma series, just to name a few. Hi, Rena. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi, Salima. It's such an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited that you're here. I'm not just excited, I'm also grateful to have you on the show today, and especially for your willingness to be open and to share, and also for your support in taking a stance with me to help break barriers of mental stigma.
Thank you so much. It's, again, an honor and wonderful to have the opportunity to share and the space to open up in this way.
So great. As you know, Rena, this podcast is about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether directly about a mental health struggle or something else. And we know that no matter what the story is, there is impact on one's own mental health in some way. And usually that's the part that gets tucked away. So this platform serves in a way to break the barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society. So we are here, really encouraging people to share and tell what individuals typically have reluctance for revealing. And of course, let's set a new trend, and I like to call this mental beauty. So, Rena, are you ready for where we are about to go?
Ooh, it sounds like it. And I love the term mental beauty. Let's do it. Beautiful.
That's it. It's the new notion. Let's spread this new message far and wide and make sure that people know what it's all about. So I'm glad you're ready to get started. The first question I have for you, Rena, it's the first question I ask every guest. Give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
So my newspaper headline would be how one person, one woman took her pain and turned it into her purpose.
Wow. Pain to purpose. Can you share a little bit more about what this title can unfold?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was diagnosed with a visible and inflammatory skin condition. It's an
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune condition called psoriasis at the
Mm-hmm.
age of 14. And it manifests on the skin as red, kind of scaly patches. And for me, it started on my stomach and spread all over my limbs, my hands, my feet, my legs, my arms.
Mm-hmm.
So people could see it. And I went from, seemingly clear skin, living this really athletic life out in the open, then to kind of having this skin condition, which caused me a lot of physical pain and discomfort from
Mm-hmm.
itching and burning, but also mental pain
Mm-hmm.
from feeling self-conscious, feeling very, very upset and sad when I looked in the mirror at my reflection. Every time I looked at my body, I felt that it was becoming this thing that I had no control over. And the pain continued, I would say, for at least 17 years. I guess I was defined by the pain, right? The
Mm-hmm.
pain, I felt like I had no control. But
Mm-hmm.
what this pain did is it invited me into living differently, into looking at my circumstances and myself from a different lens, which then led me to fulfill a purpose. And that was to first empower myself, but then to empower others who were struggling in the same way.
Well, that very much explains the pain to purpose whole analogy that you just shared. And your whole journey, you've basically walked me through where it started and where you are now. It's incredible. And so if you could expand and if we could segue into more of this untold story, tell us more about what this untold story is all about.
Absolutely. So, like I said, for these 17 years, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a cloud of denial,
Mm-hmm.
of sadness, of self hate. It was a very, very painful time. And how this was untold is because I never spoke to anyone about how I was feeling. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought I was being vain. I was worrying about aesthetics. I should just appreciate what I have, that it wasn't as bad as a terminal illness. Like there was a lot of ways that I minimized or
Mm-hmm.
invalidated my experience.
Right.
And the pain in itself, like I just thought I wasn't worthy of having that pain. And so the untold story was that I locked up what I was going through and I hid through long clothes and baggy clothes, I say, and a
Mm-hmm.
big smile and an outgoing personality. And sometimes I may have, backdoor conversations with friends and kind of confess to them how I was feeling, or maybe even in my journal. But there was
Mm-hmm.
no talking about it in a way that was constructive. It was more kind of the anguish and the waiting for this pain to go away. And so I think for myself, things really started to kind of like I started to build awareness as I became more aware, surprisingly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And I realized that I really needed to start talking about the suffering that was going on inside of my head and my body because it was stopping me from living my life. And kind of the reason why I'm on this earth, I kind of was like, if all my decisions are based around the skin that I'm in and the condition I'm living with, I wasn't really thinking beyond that. And so I was living the same day in, day out, right? I was locked behind the
Right.
bars. I always say it was like a prison. The skin felt like a prison.
The same day on repeat,
The same day on
essentially.
repeat. And then the feelings
Yeah.
of unworthiness growing and growing, and my own
Mm-hmm.
self-deprecating thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
criticisms, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
no
Mm-hmm.
friendliness, no understanding with myself. And so I always I like to think of this time when things started to flip for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that like the story was still untold at this point. However,
Mm-hmm.
I went on a meditation retreat, right? I had got to this point that my body was covered in scales. Like I couldn't even walk
Mm-hmm.
properly. I couldn't type on a computer. I couldn't drive. Like I was denying myself of any
Mm-hmm.
support or help. But as it started getting really, really bad, I
Mm-hmm.
realized things needed to change. I needed to change the way that I was living, the way that I was showing up in the world. And so I remember a suggestion of a friend. This was in 2012. They said, well, have you ever tried meditation or
Right.
mindfulness? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, for what? I don't want to sit quiet. Like, what's the point of that?
Right.
Right? I
I can only imagine you're such a your personality is so bubbly and vivacious. And then for you to think like, you want me to do what? Sit quietly? Who does that?
And it wasn't a suggestion of like 15 minutes on an app. Like this guy said to me, it's a 10-day silent retreat, right? It ends up being 12 days, but the 10 days are pure silence. And that's noble silence, meaning no eye contact, no reading, no writing. There's nothing. You meditate for 14 hours a day. And it was a very out there idea, and one that I didn't know why it spoke to me, but it did. And so I got to zoom right in to this, I'm going to say, horror story, right? Because it was really difficult to feel and to acknowledge some of the ways and things that I was thinking and the ways that I was feeling in my body. I noticed at this retreat, just becoming a little more aware gave me the opportunity to look at myself with a little more kindness, to say, I'm actually really suffering here. I'm waiting to live my life. This is really tough. You know, it's like I had an out of body experience to actually look at myself from a different lens. And so I would say that nothing really changed for me in terms of the outside circumstances. My skin didn't miraculously heal in 10 days, right? If anything, it was worse. But I left that retreat a changed person, because all of a sudden there was a softness, there was an awareness. It was no longer kind of this program that was playing, or this tape playing in my head on what I thought my life was supposed to be and how I could live. And I started to hang out in the idea of or the concept of curiosity, right? And really start to say, well, what is possible for me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you talk about this revelation that you had. And it sounds like this was the pivotal moment where you could acknowledge the suffering for the first time. And so when you talked about those, few backdoor conversations that you may have had with friends back in the day, or the journaling, that was all like secret anguish, right? Like secret writing and just kind of trying to sort through the mess, but not really know what it all means. There was no openness in talking about it openly. And it seems like this moment for you, the acknowledging the suffering, got you to the place to just get curious and gentle, and then open. And then the cycle repeats, right? Curious and gentle and open.
Yeah. Yes. Curious, gentle, open. And with the curiosity, one of the most beautiful things that came from that with self-compassion, you ask yourself the question, what do I need
in this moment?
That was the question.
What do I need in this moment right now?
So when I'm suffering, instead of looking at myself in the mirror and saying, oh, look at you with all these scales. You don't deserve to wear those clothes. What's wrong with you? I was really harsh on myself. And as I became more aware of the way I was speaking, I started to say, what if I was a little bit kinder? What if I asked myself what I need? What if I looked at myself as someone who was suffering? And as I did that, I started to unlock more. And like you said, the cycle just repeated, right? Like being kinder to myself, gentler to myself, opening a little bit more. And so I started to kind of have a revelation that I needed support. I needed to practice self-care. I needed to validate and acknowledge my feelings. I needed a place where I could talk about how I'm feeling. And a whole grocery list of more things came up. And so it was a beautiful realization for sure. And a difficult one at that.
Right. And Rena, can you tell me more about how you were affected having gone through the psoriasis?
It's 26 years in for sure. Yeah, for me.
26 years in. And so it sounds like when you were telling your story and you've been telling it, it sounds like you spent some time in shame.
Yes.
And in hiding. So tell me more about that. And I guess that's what I was meaning. Like, how were you affected by all of this? Because it's one thing to talk about the journey and where you're at now. So I guess I'm inviting you to kind of go back in a little bit into the process.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing that up. And the word shame is one that resonates deeply with me. I was ashamed of everything about myself because of my skin. And meaning, so as soon as the skin problem started, right, as soon as the dots started spreading and growing and now starting to be visible to everyone that I met, I started to feel very unworthy of anything good I thought that feeling good was not an option for me. I thought that having any type of dreams or desires to find a partner, to go to a certain program in school, to actually be the person maybe that I was called to be deep down inside. We all have that intuitive voice. And that part of me I didn't think she was worthy of coming out and being that. That I had to keep it locked up and hidden because I had this skin problem. And so the shame drove me to do a number of things because the feelings were really strong as well, right? Like because you feel like I felt so much shame, I found myself like wearing body makeup, stockings everywhere, like I said. So on a physical level, like I dressed in really baggy clothes so no one could see me. I remember wearing like gloves and really long tops when it was not appropriate. And then I would say in terms of romantic relationships, settling for much less, and people who didn't always treat me the way that maybe I desired to be treated because I thought that I should take what I can get, because why would anyone love me when I look like this? Why would anyone even want to even be intimate with me, to have any type of relationship when I was so unlovable? And of course, this was my own thought. And so I found myself settling there. I found myself settling in the jobs that I chose and the places that I went to school. I made sure that I stayed local for school so I wouldn't have to go to a residence outside, right? And stay with strangers. So I stayed home and went to school right down the street from my house because it was familiar and because I knew it. Even, I would say friends had always been so kind and open to me. I was always very blessed with wonderful friends, but I found myself overcompensating with my personality again so I wouldn't be rejected. So I feel that the shame manifested through all aspects. And I also think about my health, and how I didn't think I was a quote unquote healthy person. So I'd numb out a lot, right? Whether that was through alcohol. And that started in university for me, just drinking a lot because I found that it was a nice escape, even though it caused my skin to get more inflamed. I just thought, well, that's the way it is. So at least this helps me. So there was a lot of ways that the shame manifested, the pain manifested, and it was all from this feeling, again, of unworthiness and that I didn't think I deserved anything better. It was a hard place to be, for sure.
That is a tough place to be when it's encompassing every aspect of your life and showing up in so many forms, and when that inner critic just won't shut up. It just doesn't sound like it gave you a break at all.
No, never. Never did. And she continued, of course, now with wisdom and with time and with age and with understanding, I'm able to see what that critic was doing, trying to keep me safe so that I wouldn't be rejected or left out. And I thought I had to be a certain way to be part of the tribe or to be accepted or to be part of a group of people. Right. And so I totally, I love that part of myself, but I also know as that person I was, it was tough, absolutely tough. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the inner critic, that is like the fight in the fight, flight, or freeze response, that threat response. And you're right. It is a safety behavior. It's trying to keep you safe. It was protecting you. So it served you well for a certain period of time, at least in the best way that it could, the way it showed up. But now recognizing how limiting it was or what it disallowed you to move forward in, sounds like you have a lot of clarity about that now.
Absolutely.
So, Rena, I always look at journeys in the process of three places based on how I see people in the therapy room, in the space for therapy. And, some people, when they start with me, they're just getting started in their process. They're in the middle or they're looking back. What part of the journey would you say that you are in? Would you say that you're looking back, in the middle, or getting started?
At first kind of listen to that question, I want to say that I'm at the end of my skin journey. However, I will say that I think I'm somewhere close, in the middle to the end. So somewhere maybe going back and forth between both of those phases at times. And I say this for one reason. So I will talk about a little bit about what I do probably after this in terms of the advocacy work and skin positivity movement that I'm part of. But in terms of right now, when I look at myself, I'd say most days I'm in a place of acceptance and of self-compassion, of self-love. I practice
Mm-hmm.
self-care. I really value, honor, and respect
Mm-hmm.
myself. I look in the mirror with kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, last year I went, one of the things when people, and I don't know, maybe this is for everyone who may have something that's visibly different, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you can see on the outside right away. And maybe even some of the things that are hidden
Mm-hmm.
inside. But when you go on a beach and put on a bikini, that
Mm-hmm.
is daunting, for a lot of us. And for myself, it was extra daunting because of my skin. And I've been
Right.
able to keep my skin under kind of clear, and I've had the right treatment, but it flared up last November, November before. And I went to the British Virgin Islands for a sun vacation. And
Mm-hmm.
I went right back to the place of shame and
Mm-hmm.
of like getting nervous, and all of those feelings rushed in. I felt myself, taking off my coverall and my heart beating fast, the sweat starting, looking
Mm-hmm.
around, trying to find the most kind of hidden place on the beach because I didn't want people to see me. There was this fear that I'd be rejected, that people would run away from me, think I was contagious. It was very interesting in a
Mm-hmm.
way because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't let myself go down the, oh my gosh, put your coverall on and go home. That's what I'd normally do. Take a bus back to the hotel or whatever. I thought, no, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to feel this
Mm,
because this is
right.
important for who I
Mm-hmm.
used to be. And it's also important as I begin to process and move through this, right? Because when my skin is clear or it's in remission, it's much easier to kind of function. And now I'm in this flare up. Can I practice self compassion now? Can I be good to myself when
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been in the past? And so I remember saying to myself, like, it's okay. You're going to try this. You can take anything. So I kind of gave that critic has now become like a cheerleader. The other
Mm-hmm.
side, I guess, like the, like, you can do this. This is okay. Like you can sit
Right.
on the beach and show your skin. And this will build more compassion for yourself, but also when you work with people who might be feeling the same way. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'd love to say I'm at the end because most days I feel like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
occasionally, when the moment calls for it, I find myself slipping back into old patterns. But the difference now, like I said, is that I'm not self critical and I'm not a jerk to myself.
Right. Oh, it's so fascinating to hear that your critic has transformed. And I get what you're saying because it's what you're essentially saying here is that you're still going to get triggers from time to time because this is part of your story. This is part of you. And when you do have flare-ups like the one you talk about at the beach, you chose to manage differently. You recognize the power that you had and you chose to sit with it, and you made the choice, the deliberate choice to pay attention and to work through it and to validate. So it seems so transformational just to even hear how you're dealing with it when these moments show up.
I love, the word choice and
Mm-hmm.
deliberate choosing, because that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what it is. It's actually choosing to look at it a different way. And I think one of the bumps that I've had along the road in any type of growth or change I've made is that I expect that once I make a change, that I'm done the work, that I won't be triggered again, that everything will be fine. And as I'm realizing as I live through my life, that triggers do happen. And like you said so
Mm-hmm.
beautifully, it's how I choose to respond. And again, from a mindfulness perspective and from a theoretical perspective and anything I've read, I'm like, yeah, of course, easy. Of course, that's the truth. But then when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to actually practicing it and doing it, I always say to myself, like, knowing is not doing. And so knowing is good.
It's step one.
Yeah,
Yes, so
step
knowing is
one.
good. It's step one. But doing is the added piece. Yes.
Yeah, when I'm triggered, how am I choosing to respond? And
Mm-hmm.
some days I fall on my face, and I do go down that rabbit hole on occasion. However, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to pick myself up. I'm able to reframe, reach out for help when I can't see through, whether that's through therapy, whether that's through a support group, whether that's through talking with
Mm-hmm.
friends. I'm learning how to be every day, so I'd say this is a
Mm-hmm.
constant and consistent practice for me, choosing and choosing and choosing again.
Yeah, your choosing is evolving. So when I'm hearing you talk about this, I just sense that you have this solid sense of dedication. I can hear it in your voice. And a couple moments ago, when I first asked you this question, you talked about how, you mentioned self everything. I have self-acceptance. I show myself compassion. I self-love. I self-care. I self-respect. I have kindness for myself. And it seems like because you are abundant in all of this now, you've been able to get to the place to give others, and then still know when you need to give to yourself, and then still know when you need to ask for yourself. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. It's not
Mm-hmm.
selfish. And that was a huge revelation for me because I thought it was previously. A lot of us will say what I've realized through just experience is that when I'm able to care for myself and my needs and I prioritize that, then I show up in the world for others in a way that makes me feel proud and in a way that I'm able to be true, supportive, and there for others. When I treat myself well, then I can reflect that out to others. And so,
it's a cycle of resourcing. So what you're talking about is exactly what Dr. Kristin Neff talks about all the time as well. But it's that abundant mindset, right? And when I say resourcing, it's about having yourself full. So you have everything that you need. So you're leading with a full cup so that you're able to give from a full cup. And if you don't have your cup filled and you're spreading yourself thin, you're going to dry out. There's nothing else left to give, right? And that's when we start seeing tensions in relationships and whatnot. And then to your point about selfish, yes, it has such a negative connotation. We hear the word selfish and we automatically, it's judgment, right? But if you look at the dictionary of what that word means, it's about taking care of oneself first before someone else. And so what is wrong in that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now it just seems again that it's necessary versus optional because when I was living in that place of lack, right? So of not feeling good enough, of feeling unworthy, I was living very much from this critical place, but also from the outside in, looking for validation from others to say I was okay. And also assuming that others, wouldn't like me because I was a certain way. And therefore I was showing up in my relationships, not open, not ready to listen to others, but instead I'm consistently and constantly protecting myself. And so it's interesting because as I started to care for myself, then I was able to show up differently in the world. And I thought this was revelatory for me because I thought I had to be sacrificing, I had to sacrifice my needs and I had to wait for others to tell me I was good. And if I took time for myself, then that wasn't okay. Or if I needed extra sleep, that I was a failure, or my skin needed a certain type of care, that it wasn't, I shouldn't be doing those things. There was a lot of judgment. And again, as I started to ask myself what I needed and then give it to myself, starting to talk to myself like I would my friends, it's my whole life shifted.
Yeah. And so would you say that mindfulness has been your key to powering yourself or like having that bridge to feeling alert the way you are now?
Absolutely. 100%. Mindfulness has been an absolute game changer for me. So obviously from a meditation standpoint, so the formal applied practice of meditating was helpful because it helped me, again, start to tune into the body sensations. It helped me start to tune into my thoughts and my feelings, kind of even when I was just sitting on a cushion. And so I was able to kind of gauge and get an understanding to see where was I at. It let me understand where I was at without judgment, with kindness, with patience, curiosity. So then I was then able to take the next step in asking myself questions, right? What do I need? What would help me feel better? I was then able to take the next step. So mindfulness and waking up to my life in this way has been absolutely pivotal in changing my inner dialogue, in changing the way I experience the world, the way I look at others, the way that I show up and serve. So yes, waking up to my life has been one of the most transformational parts of my journey. Absolutely. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about sharing mindfulness, not only just for meditation, but as a practice and a lifestyle, right? How to bring it into life so that we're able to be all that we need to be and want to be and desire to be for ourselves and for the world around us.
That's incredible. This process that you share, it's just incredible. And for me, mindfulness is also a part of my world too. I mean, I won't say that I'm a top expert, but I am a regular user of its methods. I've studied it, I've trained with it. And, it happens every single time when people share with me how mindfulness has aided their process. And every single time, I'm just fascinated. It's like that first time surprise every single time. So when you're sharing with me like how it was a waking up to your life and how you were able to get to that place of being curiosity and paying attention, and it's like that surprise moment that doesn't change. I'm mesmerized by it every single time someone shares with me how mindfulness impacts them.
I love that it's a surprise.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a surprise.
Because it is, right? First of all, because you bring that curiosity and you bring a beginner's mind, right? Acting like what I'm doing every day, like I'm doing it for the first time. And so I am then opening up the opportunity to be surprised and delighted, sometimes mortified.
Yeah, that happens too.
Right? I'm like, oh my goodness, what kind of thought is this? Or this sensation is really, really strong right now. Like when I'm having a lot of burning or itching, like psoriasis is a painful condition because it's inflammation. So when my joints are burning, when my feet are burning, whatever it is, the nice part about mindfulness is also the aspect of non-judgment, right? And sitting with what is, not identifying with my pain and saying, this is my pain. Instead, I feel this pain here. I notice it here, but on this foot, I actually don't have that same pain, right? It's just acknowledging where I'm at. And like I said, then I'm able to give myself what I need versus oh gosh, Rena, what's wrong with you? This pain is the worst. This is the worst. I hate this pain. I hate this pain. Resisting it. Which, oh my gosh, I did that so long. Why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me? Because that question didn't help me at all. And so it's like, as I became more mindful, I was invited to again ask myself better questions.
I like that you said that. I really like how you said that. And I was invited to ask myself better questions. That's great. It's so simple when you say it, but we don't do it in the moment if we're not actually paying attention, and the fact that you've gone through this process and you've really equipped yourself with mindfulness, that invitation to look within, to ask those questions. It's the small changes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is those small pivots and the small changes becomes the core in our foundation, which then becomes solid, right?
Yes. And that's where the formal training really, really helps, right? That's where the meditation helps. I often share, when I work with people or just with friends, if they ask me, I can't meditate. I can't sit and meditate. Because the formal practice is a really important part of learning how to pay attention. And, in the good days and the times that are great, it's easy to sit, and when it's hard sometimes, when the body hurts for me, for example, or my mind is extra turbulent one day or another, or I'm not feeling that great, sometimes it's very difficult to sit. But I always say, like, Sharon Salzberg says this, we don't meditate to become the best meditator, but we meditate, and I'm paraphrasing, we meditate to become good at life. Right. So that so I can respond versus react habitually to my life and circumstances and all my thoughts, feelings, and everything going on inside and outside of me.
Absolutely. Responding versus reacting. It's such an important message.
Yeah.
Tell me, what would you say that you're grateful for with encountering this journey with psoriasis and journeying through body positivity?
Oh, I love that question so much. And like I said, there's some days where gratitude feels beyond reach for me. It's not often, but it's a wonderful reframe when I allow myself to feel grateful. So I often write, and especially in the beginning of my journey into healing my skin and again, not only from the outside, but from the inside, right? And the way that my skin has affected my mental health and my, my spiritual health as well, or my emotional health. I believe that this skin condition has taught me compassion. I'm grateful for compassion because I'm able to look at another person and I can feel for them. When somebody's suffering, I don't turn my back on them. I am a person who really, I believe I've become so much more heartful because I've suffered so much. And so I often would, especially when I was suffering a lot in the beginning and I was going through really bad flares and I was starting to become more mindful, I started to work at hospice. So in hospices, people who are at the end of their life, I worked with a lot of people who were displaced from their homes and they were in shelters or on the street, people who were really going through tough times in their life. Maybe they'd gone through big breakups or, just fallen apart completely. And I was able to sit with them and their pain without trying to change them, but just to bear witness. And I wasn't afraid of looking at the suffering. I wasn't afraid of hearing, the terrible stories. I was able to look at them as a fellow human being, eye to eye, right? Not as a helper, not as a top-down person. Oh, I'm here to help you. But instead to say, you know what? I'm suffering too. And we can be here together and we can do this one day, one step at a time. I think psoriasis has also taught me that things change. That yes, my skin may be really bad and it was really bad for many parts of my life, but it also changed and it got better and it got worse and it got better. So although sometimes my life may feel really terrible, I remind myself that it's changed and it will change again. It's also invited me, I say I'm grateful for the self-development because it's so difficult to live with. I feel that I thrust myself into finding new ways and new perspectives, new mindsets, working with, whether that's through spiritual practice, whether that's through just working with mindset or mindfulness. I'm always looking to learn and to grow so that I can feel good. And I'd say the last thing I'm grateful for is that I've been able to really work into the psoriasis community. So I've created an online Instagram community, which I know you mentioned in the intro, Psoriasis Thoughts. And that was created as a support for myself when I was first starting to wake up from my pain, right? I started it as a support for myself, as a, quote unquote, coming out of hiding, of living with the skin condition and starting to really share my feelings and my thoughts and how this is a really a journey of ups and downs, right? This is not me healed. This is actually me broken, knees on the ground, on the floor. I'm broken right now, but I am ready to change. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I started this page and it's progressed. It's been 4 years since I started it. And it's now a place where I've been able to open up as a human being, but I've also been able to connect with others. And now I educate and I empower and I inspire others who may be at the beginning of their journey or people who are still kind of feeling broken. And I remind them that there is hope, that it can get better, that they can see their way through this because I've been there too. And so it's given me community. I feel that I wouldn't take it away. I always ask, I ask people that as well. Would you take it away if you could? Would you take away the pain if you could? And personally, everyone might have a different answer, but for me as an individual, I wouldn't take away the skin condition or going through the diagnosis of it because it's given me so much.
Of course. And it's shaped you to be who you are today. And it's not like if you take that away, it wouldn't be something else that you'd experience, right? We don't have the option of living like wizards where we can just zap things, right? But when you talk about, if someone was to ask you, would you give this, if you had an option to swap out, we don't really know what we would be swapping, right? There could be something really different. And I think, it's more about, the learnings and the lessons on my path and what it has allowed me to do and learning on the spot, right?
Learning on the spot.
Yeah, yes. Learning on the spot. And when you talk about that sense of community that you've created, there's so much awakening that happens when we lean on community.
Yes.
And I think it's such a vital part of how humans function. And as humans, we're creatures that have been created to bond, to connect. So when we hold ourselves hostage, we're not really showing up with common humanity. We're not allowing ourselves to be in that space of common humanity. And what you've created here, this community that you talk about, it's just inspiring. Great.
Oh. Thank you. I love that you said that because for so long, right, I thought that by opening up about how I was feeling or the pain I was in or sharing with others, I was just harping on my problems that I needed to heal as an individual by myself in the corner. And then I could go and live my life, right? There was often this phrase I used, when my skin is clear, then I will XYZ, right? It's like a lot of people say, when I feel better, then I'll do this.
Right.
So I always use the phrase healing in community. And that is exactly right. Because, people always say, thank you so much. You've helped me. I said, you've helped me too.
Right.
This is a back and
There's
forth.
reciprocity.
It's reciprocity. This is not a one-way street. I'm not someone who knows it all, but I'm someone who's willing to share what I know and to learn from the people who I serve and am served by.
Yeah. Rena, you talk about waking up from your pain and coming out from hiding. And I know earlier in this conversation, you talked about how there was a period of time where you were numbing a lot and numbing the pain and not paying attention to it. And from a mental health perspective, is there anything else that you could share in terms of how this untold story and journey has affected your mental health, bringing in this idea of what numbing was like for you?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a really good question. So, from a mental health perspective, with the visible skin condition and the pain, I felt a lot of I had a lot of depressive episodes, pretty dark episodes, like not getting out of bed, not wanting to show up to work. So it was pretty debilitating at the time. And as well, when I went through really bad flare-ups, and my skin was all exposed on my hands and my feet, which was, like red gloves. I started to get a lot of social anxiety. So anytime there was a wedding, I would quickly go to, what am I going to wear? What am I going to wear? Oh my gosh, who's going to be there? What's the lighting going to be like? Anything new, any type of new experience, there was a lot of that. And so I started leaning on substance, whether that be alcohol or cannabis. I started leaning on substance really heavily to numb the pain so I didn't have to feel anything. And sometimes it helped, and other times it exacerbated the symptoms. But it did help me forget for a little while, right? Even if it was just a night or a day. And I would say like it helped me cope to some degree, but it didn't let me face what I was actually feeling, or acknowledge it. So a lot of the times when the anxiety would get real bad and I'd numb, I just wouldn't show up at places at all. My friends started to joke about, that I was like ghosting them, right? I never would show up. I wasn't able to. So from a mental health perspective, the numbing was through that, also through food. I ended up gaining about 50 pounds through again, for people in curvier bodies, that's not, I always say like, it's not to shame anyone who's in a different type of body than I was. But for me, I'm 5'10" and in a pretty slender frame. And so 50 pounds on my body put a lot of stress on my skin and my joints, right? I wasn't in a body that felt good, although it looked okay. I felt terrible. And so gaining that weight, it kind of kept me safe. I think the food helped me feel better. Shopping helped me feel better, even if I wasn't going to wear the clothes. So there was a lot of ways that I tried to, I guess, cover up the pain, cover up what I was feeling, and just distract myself for a while. But I felt so down still. It numbed me, but I always unnumbed after, right? I always had to wake up and face myself in the morning. Right. And that's when I was still in the same position, going through the same cycle.
Yeah, it sounds like that was your way of feeling control of the situation, covering up the pain and feeling that safety of, even if it was just a distraction. And when you were talking about, it didn't necessarily solve my problem, but that break that I got helped me cope. So it's almost like you had a pause, but the pause was just to escape, not to manage.
That's right.
Yeah. And all of the other aspects that you mentioned, the distraction, the shopping, the food, it's a way to keep things in control, keep things in check, feeling like that's something you could manage or replace. It's like it's a replaced behavior replaces something else, but the true core of what was going on was still hanging out and waiting for you to acknowledge it. And then you did, right?
Thank you. Yeah. I remember going alcohol free. That was a big one for me because I was drinking a lot. And that was much later after my mindfulness journey. It was 2016. Because again, we can be aware, but then it's scary to take new steps and to make changes because you're like, what? I don't know this life. What's sober life going to feel like for me?
Right.
And so 2016, I took the year completely dry, and it was really, again, difficult. And because I had a mindfulness practice at that point, like meaning I was practicing myself and also sharing it, everything started rushing in, right? When I was unable to numb during the hard times, I was actually having to sit with myself. And that in itself was revelatory, but it did feel like a sort of, torture. Yeah.
Yeah. Rena, I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up. I've read about the vicious cycle of stress, depression, and skin problems. Of course, I'm not an expert on it or anything like that, but some things that have come across, it points to how much of a link there is between, what goes on in our minds and what shows up in our bodies. So I was curious about what is your take on the link between skin conditions and psychology? And I guess the reason I'm curious about it is because the information I was reading, I came across they were talking about like simple cognitions, examples like I said or did something foolish, and then that somehow caused, virtually every blood vessel in someone's skin to flare up. Does that also happen in the form of psoriasis?
Yes, there's a huge link for a lot of us between mind and body connection, 100%. I believe in that so much. And I think I look at it in a few ways. So there's also some talk about, what we put in our mouth and what we ingest can affect our skin, right? So if I'm eating inflammatory foods, if I'm drinking alcohol, if I'm doing all these things, then it's going to make my skin worse. However, I think that if the body's stressed, right, and it's in that fight or flight mode, and it's always kind of like in a place of like high stress, then the food can't work. The meditation can't work. The medication can't work. Like any of the ways that I would be trying to take care of myself, it won't work because my body is in this high stress place, right? It's just trying to keep me alive. So I would say to myself, like, I have to feed my mind. I have to take care of my mental health in that way. But another way that it manifests is when we get a flare up. So let's say something's happened and I've gotten a flare up, whether that's like a psychological event. Like, for example, my father passed away in 2018, and I had been in remission for 2 years, and he passed away suddenly. And of course, like, I speak about it kind of easily today. Some days it's harder, but it was a shock to my system because I had been in remission or whatever. Like I said, my skin was very calm because I was taking care of myself. And within a month, I was covered again in psoriasis plaques. Even though I was eating the same food, even though I was living the same way, my heart was broken. And my skin completely flared. And so when it flared, I started stressing about the flare, and the stress from the flare caused the flare to stress. Like, it was like this vicious cycle of I'm flared, I stress about the flare, then I'm stressed, so I flare more, so I do believe that there is a very strong connection between the skin and the mind and the body. Absolutely.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a connection. And I know I read about it. It's one thing to read about something, but, getting your personal take on it and for you to share that story that exemplifies this link that research and articles talk about, it makes me so much more curious, in the whole, on a visual level, the skin, right? The skin, as you mentioned before, it's so visual. So the skin is the most noticeable part of our body that could be impacted by psychological factors.
Yes, absolutely. And this example proved it to me as well.
Right.
Because going through it, I was like, oh, this has to be true. I've talked about it and I've hypothesized about it. I've read about it, but actually see it manifest from a place where I was aware. I knew what was happening. I knew what was going in my body. I knew the way I was living was a certain way. And to see it all come back within a month from just a traumatic experience, it really drove the point home for me how much, that sometimes things that happen in our life can impact our bodies and our skin. And, I had if I'm honest, I don't know if I could have handled it any differently, but I knew at that point, again, instead of going to be beating myself up, I said, obviously, this is a hard time for you, Rena. This is what your body needs to do. So let's be there for ourselves. Like I talk to myself like a third person, I'm going to be there for you. We're going to get through this. We know, like, let's, my mental health is really important. And that meant for me, I was staying with my mom for a little bit when my dad passed away just to support her. But that also meant for me to go back to my place in the city, have some space and get back to balance, which I really needed to do to get my mental health in check.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. What a manifestation. Rena, what is your key message to the listeners of our show?
I love that question as well. And of course, I could say a number of things, but I believe now, through the conversation we had, that the answers we seek, what we're seeking is seeking us, yes, but it also lives within us. We are our own best teachers. We can read many things, We can look outside and collect knowledge and whatever else we do. But everything we need is right inside of us if we're willing to listen and to open up. I also want to say, that things change. So if there is a time when you're really struggling or you're going through a low, don't give up on yourself. There's hope in a new day. And I've had to say that to myself, and I'm sure I will have to say that to myself in the future. I've had to say that to myself a number of times. And the final thing I would say, one more, is, you're good right now. There's nothing to add or to take away. Although you may not feel perfect at times, or there may be things you want to change or manipulate or move, this moment matters, and you're okay right here, right now, as you are.
You are okay right now, right here, as you are.
Yeah, you're okay. Even when it's tough, you are perfect as you are right here, right now. You will get through it, and remembering that things change. Because I always think about myself, as a broken person. And when I go through tough times and reminding myself of those things can be really helpful.
You really hit a point of how healing has a mysterious way of being, and healing doesn't necessarily mean eliminating or deleting or having something vanish has been your theme that we've been talking about. I'm hearing you really say it means a shift in your perspective.
Yes.
So tell me, I'm curious, what's your game changer inspiration that is close to you that reflects your untold story? Is there a quote, a book, or something?
Yes. Quote, and it's going to actually vibrate off what you just said perfectly. And that is the Wayne Dyer quote: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
So excellent. Shifting your perspective.
Yeah, it's putting on those new glasses, fresh perspective. Like you said, what a gift.
Yeah. Amazing. And so what would be a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Social media, Instagram, the skin community and the psoriasis community for myself has been and continues to be the biggest support system in my life. And, a lot of us, like, social media gets a bad rap, but I always say social media changed my life. It changed my life. It helped me live out loud. I wore shorts for the first time with a skin flare. I took a lot of different challenges because of the support I got through social media, and specifically Instagram. So that may be, a bit of a fluffy one or one that's not as deep, but truthfully, it has been an absolute savior for me because the people have been incredible, and I've built and am part of a community that has changed my life in more ways than one.
I love what you said. It made me loud. That was great.
It did, totally.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really good way of letting people know how you can have gain from social media, right? Sometimes it does get a bad rap, rather, but for you, it was a life-changing experience. And not only that, but you have an entire skin positivity community, right? Psoriasis_thoughts. Isn't that you?
Yeah, that's me. And and like you said earlier, it's afforded me wonderful opportunities to get into the media, to have talks like this, to be able to share my story so that, someone who may be suffering the way that I was maybe finds a bit of light and finds a bit of hope so they too can kind of move forward and fulfill all their deepest desires.
And so how many followers have you got now on your Instagram?
I don't know. I think it's just over 14,000. So it's growing. It's growing.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. Rena, look at that social proof. You are a game changer agent for yourself. And if we talk about ebbs and flows, if you ever have another ebb day, please, please, please remind yourself of this. What an impeccable contribution, to not just this community, but just for taking risk to show up in the world, to do it with such openness and vulnerability. Amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Salima. Thank you for all your beautiful questions and giving me the opportunity, and to your listeners for allowing me this opportunity to share with you as well.
It's been a pleasure. Rena, how can people connect with you? How are you findable if someone wants to connect with you?
Sure. You can check me out on my website, which is Reena Roop, REENARUP.com. And there's a bunch of ways to connect through my socials on there, or at my Instagram, psoriasis, PSORIASIS_thoughts with an S.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Salima.
Reena, it means so much to have this vibrant conversation. You don't know, you completely unmasked and unveiled, and just the way you shared. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. And I also want to thank you for trusting the process that guided you to be open and to share all the intricate details and, just letting your voice lead the way, all the way from where it started to where you are now, and sharing this deep, untold story. And, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down barriers of mental stigma. Thank you.
Thank you, Salima, and thank you for creating the space.
To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.